Hi, developers. So today we're going to do another live in English. We are receiving André Baltieri, sorry, to talk about OOP, why we should get back to the basics, okay? So I'm gonna let him introduce himself and start to talk about his topics. All right, that's it. Welcome, André.
Great, thank you. So thank you everyone for joining the session. And as Anna told before, I am André Baltieri, or Balta, is known as Balta, Microsoft MVP in Visual Studio Development Technologies. And I also work with web development since, I think, 2005 or maybe. And nowadays, I'm the owner of Balta.io, which I will going to share it with you on the chat, the link. Okay. You can find some courses of mine there, and a little bit more about my jobs and things I do with the community. Right? It's fine. I don't feel comfortable to introduce myself. I even think I'm overloading and
No
talking too
trouble.
much, but that's okay. That's fine. So let's get to the subject of this talk that we are focusing today, which is why we should get back to the basics regarding the OOP, or object-oriented programming. So this is I suggested this topic because I think this is a very important topic. I wrote some articles regarding how to study and how to progress in a such wild world that we're living today. Every day we have sort of a new JavaScript framework. We have new frameworks, new languages every day. So how to survive on this scenario? No? This is very difficult. It's very difficult for me also because as you may think or may know, uh, being part of Microsoft MVP take me some time. Work with development take me some time. Making course takes from me some time, and learn take me a lot of time because I need to learn the things to pass to you. And a few months ago, I wrote an article saying some tips that I use to some kind of to do or checklist that I do before I start studying. And one of the things is knowing very well the basics. If you know very well OOP, if you know very well C# or any other language, Java, doesn't matter. If you know very well a language, it's not easy to move forward into a new technology. And starting to dig into this topic, I found that there's a lot of people that think that they know about object-oriented programming, but in fact, they don't know. And even me, when I try to find a way to study more OOP, I found that I did not know everything about it. And I'm about 10 years of programming. So why we need to get back to the basics, and why we need to understand these points. There are a few things that I think would help you on your journey with developer. And one of these things is OOP, right? So I will not be talking the entire live. I will show you some code that, because I know you are expecting that. This is just a short moment that I need to share with you some words that will probably encourage you to study OOP more and to get back to yourself and ask yourself if you really know OOP. This is not just about OOP. This is about everything. I think the worst case you could have about something is when you think you know about something, you know everything. I know everything about OOP, but in fact you don't know. This is the false positive. But let's start to code a little bit just to show you some basic tips, some basic concepts, and I think you all are gonna be surprised with just a little point, just little changes on your code that will make you code better, and understanding this concepts will make it easier to move forward in other languages, right? So I will start to share my screen here. Are you seeing my screen? Is that fine? Right?
Yeah. Yes, we can see.
Nice, nice.
Okay.
So I will start open my Visual Studio Code. In fact, this is open here on my second screen, right? And I will open a new folder here on my temp folder and create a new folder here. OOP, select this folder. All right. Okay. I'm not going to focus on create a very organized project or something like that. I will just cover the basic oriented object programming sections. All right. Not sure if my voice is fine for you. Is the volume okay?
Yeah, I think it is. Guys, is that okay? The volume? Um,
Okay. I tried to increase a little bit, but I think
oh,
it's fine.
yeah.
All right. So
All right.
okay, for this, I will use C# as the base language, but object-oriented programming (OOP) is language agnostic, so you can run these examples on Java, PHP, or any other language that supports OOP, right? So I will start executing .NET New Console to create a new console application here. And over my program.cs here, right, we have our main code. Okay, we're gonna focus just on this class. We're not gonna separate the concern into another classes, but keep in mind that is a good pattern. It's a good way to separate the things, right? And if you want to know more about some concepts and base patterns, check my course 1975, Modeling Rich Domains. Okay, I will put the link on the chat a little bit before, right? So, for example, here we have a class which is inside a namespace using some sort of other imports here, other classes or something like that. So the namespace is the virtual separation of our classes, right? You can have the separation of your classes inside folders. You can create your folder here, create another class that is a physical separation, but we can have, and we should have the separation of the virtual classes here, which use the namespace. Then we have our class just here, right? In C#, if you do not specify anything before your class, it will be private, okay? So this class is private, but we can use public, right, and protect, okay? Let's start by building a customer class, right? So if we're talking about OOP, we're talking about modeling the real-world situations inside of our program, right? Is there a lot of cases that I found on systems which let the business rules on the database. Personally, I don't like to have the business rules on the database over stored procedure, for example. I prefer to keep it on the object side, which I can have properties, events, and a lot of other good things, easy to test also, right? So I'm not going to discuss this today. So we're focused on solving problems with OOP here, right? This is what OOP is made for, to solve problems on your application. If you're not doing that, you're not using OOP in the good shape, in the good form that they have. So let's start by the basic here, which you probably have done on your life, which is create a public class customer, right? And this public class customer will have a property called name, oops, right? Document and email, right? Just this three properties for we start is fine, right? Probably you have already done this, right? Then you can come here and instantiate a new customer. Customer equals new, oops, new customer, right? And then we can start to fill our customer. Customer.name equals to André, Baltieri, and customer.document. I will not put my document here. 1, 2, 3. All right, and then customer.email equals to and data.io. All right, that is it. That is the main code for our customer here. And you probably thinking, what's wrong with this code now? There's a few problems here on our customer. When we start to write code and we start to work in big projects, it's common to have to share your code with another teams, with another developers, and other things. Let's suppose that you are working on a big store project, right? And you're responsible to do the customer side, and there are another team that is responsible to do the store side, and you need to communicate each other. So probably you will pack this code right into a DLL, right, and share this with the other team. That is a common thing to do. This doesn't mean you will build and copy the DLL to the other team, but in fact, it means that you could probably using NanoGet to generate a package and export this class to other people use. As soon as you start to grow with programming, we will stop to thinking about just doing your job and doing a job that make the life of other persons easy. And this means that you are, for example, coding for other programmers. This become more and more difficult, right? Because let's suppose that I will share this class with other programmers, and they start to build, right? They start to build their code. They start to instantiate this customer, and which information should I pass to this customer here? I don't have an idea. So we need to grab the documentation, but where is the documentation? By the way, they do write documentation. That is a good point. That because I hate to do that. So I think a good code explain itself. So we don't need to to write a lot of documents telling what this code does if this is intuitive, right? So let's make a small change here that will make this simple line of code be maybe 1,000% better, right? Which is using a constructor. Constructor is a method that is called every time that this class is instantiated, right? It should have the same name of the class and could have or not parameters, right? By default, if you don't specify any constructors here, it will have a public constructor, right? And for this case, there's a public constructor, which is parameterless, right? No parameters here. So that is not what we want here. So let's grab this code here and click on this bulb and generate constructor here, right? That is fine. So now we have a constructor which requires the name, the document, and the email from the customer. And if we simply delete this public constructor here, right? Let's check our code. Wow, it's wrong now. So every time that someone will instantiate your customer, he will know that he needs to pass here the name, the document, and the email, right? That is what I'm talking about. When you start to think about making some intuitive code, you don't need to write effective documents, right? And to think about what the people will learn from their documents or from their code. So here we are specifying which is needed to have a customer. For example, it's very clear for me that I need a name, a document, an email, and an email when starting building a customer, right? So this is the first step. And then we can move forward here and start to do something that I call you can't simply change things inside your customer. Let's suppose that for your name, for your document, and for your email, you have some sort of business rule, right? That is applied here. If you can change this after instantiate your customer.name equals to an empty string, for example, right? We're violating this rule. We just created a rule here that we need a name, document, and an email. Obviously, it's a very simple example here, right? You can feel this when you move forward to big situations, big calls, big problems. But let's focus on this. And we say that we need a name, a document, and an email here, and we just pass an empty string here, right? Let's just take it. If name, let's string dot is nowhere empty. Name. Let's throw a new exception. Valid name. Right, just to make this more visible for us. By the way, do you know the difference between use string with uppercase S and string with lowercase? No one. This is the string. We call this other string here. So if you want to save some processing, just using the minor S here, right? So we have a business rule here. Okay. Rule name should not be empty, right? And as you can see, this rule is just being applied here, right, on my constructor. In fact, that is it's not a pattern, but is a good advice called SPOF. SPOF. Right? Which means single point of failure, right? And this basically tells you to avoid to duplicating your code, right? So basically, if you put this validation here, it just need to stay here, not in many other places, right? If you need to put it in other place, you probably need to separate it into another class or something like that. But we just want a single point to build our customer, which is its constructor, right? So we pass in the name, the document, and the email here, right? So I need to avoid this to happen, right? Because setting the name after the customer is being built will affect my name, telling this that it's an empty string. So what I use to do here is come here and create private sets for my properties, right? So doing this, the simple lines of code will prevent the one that are consuming our code just to do things like that. Customer.name equals to null, equals to empty, right? Just let me grab some water here. Ah, nice. So we are moving to a better code here, right? So this is also one of the 5 principles, and the 5 principles best. I think that is the best things that I read in my entire life regarding NLP, which is the solid, right? Doing this, we did the open-closed principle, right? Our class is open for extension. You know, you can create here, you can come here and create public key tests, customer, right? We can do the implementation. Sorry, I'm really working with TypeScript so much these days that I forgot how to do the inheritance in C#. But you got. We're open for extension, but we are closed for modification, right? We can't modify our class from out of it, right? So we are doing. We're so good here. We have built our customer here, which is fine, but there is a lot of other rules that we need to care about. For example, let's get back to the email, right? We need to validate the email to check if it is a real email or a fake email, right? I'm not digging into how to validate email or something like that here, but let's suppose that I need to validate the email here. So if email dot contents here, all right, throw new exception invalid email, right? I know there is a regular expression to do that. So this is just a demo, right? So if your email doesn't contain this share, we will throw an exception called invalid email, right? But as you expect, if we move forward and create another class here, public class employee, right? Which will have probably the same properties from the customer, right? We need again to create a constructor employee to save some time doing this. Click on the light bulb, generate constructor for employee. Okay, and then we need to repeat this code. That's because it's basically the same rule here for here. So I just told you that it's bad to do that. That's because let's suppose that you found you use a regular expression here, and you found that you wrote a very wrong regular expression that is not validating some kind of emails. Uh, if you have this, which is failing the spot single pointer failure, as we can see, we have the same code here and the same code here, right? You have two places to change your 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 rule, right? So this is also called primitive obsessions here, uh, which means that, for example, here we have three properties: name, document, and email, right? And all those three properties are string. And it's very common you to create some public properties with ints, booleans, date time, and go on, right? This kind of type is called the primitive types: string, int, double, float, and etc. These are primitive types. And when we create a class here, for example, the customer class, it's become a complex type, right? This is a complex type, and this string here is a primitive type. So basically, when you write your entire code just with primitive types, you're going to something that we call primitive obsession, right? Which is in some scenarios very very bad. That's because your main focus on using string, integers, and sort of things, and you probably will fall on this gap that I told you, that if your mail contains something, if your email contains something, and replacing the code with that. So how do you get off it? Basically, we can go down here and create another class, public class email, right? All right, and then we have our property, our string property address, right? I will make it private, following that pattern that I told you. Open for modification, open for extensions, closed for modifications. And basically, I'm gonna create a constructor with that property here. Oops. Let's go here, right? And here I will put my validation, right? If address that contains, I will throw a new exception, invalid email, right? Now we have a complex type called email, which is being validated every time, every single time that it is instantiated. So we can go back here and change this to an email, right? And change this to an email. And obviously we can remove this code here. We can remove, we already removed that. But here we need to receive an email, right? And here we need to receive an email, not a string, right? So basically here we need to pass a new email, right? I talk a little bit. Sorry, it was missing prints. On my talks, I every time I try to say something about tests, how to do some good tests, the importance to test your application. Basically, when you do not test your application exclusively for your domain, which we are doing this now with object-oriented programming. Here, you can't estimate and you can prevent what we're gonna do with your code. So you can You can have some kind of bug here that will cost for you $1 or $1,000,000. You're blind. You're totally blind. And the answer that I receive regarding say that you need to test your applications is that tests cost so much. For example, for my team to test, to execute tests, to write tests and execute tests, it will cost about 30 or 40%. It will increase 30 or 40% of my project. So how do we measure that, and how do we increase or improve our code testability, right? When we start to think about test our code, we need to think about reuse our code, right? That's because, for example, if I had the same rule here, our customer, and the same rule here on employee, you, I'm not sure if you can see, but we need to execute two tasks for the same rule here, right? In fact, we are testing if a string is null or empty here, which is a very full test, right? Doesn't mean a lot of things for us. I don't think that it will aggregate something for our project. Just to say you have a test. I can see a lot of people saying that they have 3,000 tests and have a good coverage, but which need to be tested, right? Your tests are effective. That's a good question. When you separate the concerns, you clear can understand that. For example, let's pick this email class for here. We can execute one test for here, right? To check if this email is valid. That's okay. We can execute to be true. We can execute a test to validate some email or to check if some email is invalid or something like that. Then we are reusing the email here, which means that we are reusing the test also. We don't need to test it anymore. So if you replace this class here, if you replace the document here with a class also, public class document, we will have a property here. If you write prop, then tab twice, or if you hit prop, if you text prop G and tab twice, you have a property with private set also. So grab here a string and say this is the document number, and we'll also repeat that process, generate a constructor, and do the validation here. If number dot length was different from 11, which is the document without the points, something like that, I will throw a new exception, okay, which is invalid document, right? That's okay. Then I go back here and replace my document with the document. Do the same here, right? Do the same here. Do the same here, right? Okay, here we'll have a new document, right? And as you expect, we can do this with the name also. This is not something that I usually do, but let's do this here, name, right? And create here string first name and last name, right? Okay. Okay, we generate that. So here we can string dot is new or empty. First name new exception, valid name, right? I will put here our expression. Okay. If first name or last name, let me change it here to the last name. All right. If first or last name is empty, I will throw a new exception, which is invalid. So we got the name here, name here, name here, name here, and name here, right? All right, let's take this code off here. Okay, we have take off this code also, and sure, here we need to have this new name here. Okay, let me check that. All right. This is composed by the first name and last name now. Okay. So basically what we did here is to segment our class into multiple subclasses, right? Which one with its own validation. So we can reuse our code. That is the word that you need to fix in your mind. Reuse your code. So with the email, we have the validation here, but obviously we can have a lot of many other validations here just to change the email. With the documents, of course, we can have the validation with the digits to check if it's real document, right? And for the name, we just have the string validation here, and there's other thing that I do here. Override string to string. I just override the toString method here. That's because it will make easy for us to do this. Let's suppose that I want to show the customer name on the screen. If I go here on my console.write, I will do the customer.name, right? But I save this for a while and clear my console here and .NET run to run this, right? And it printed some new value, right? Let me take it off here just a little bit. Okay, let's suppose you want to print your customer name, right? As you expect, it will bring up the name type, right, which is OOP.name, with the namespace the class name. So I frequently see many people doing this first name customer.name last name, right? Okay, did we solve the problem? All right, we solved the problem. Okay, but this is not the best way. Then you should know the best way is doing some string interpolation, right? Here, first name, last name. This is the other thing you can do here. Just put a $sign in front of your string, and then you can open. This is not the brackets. I don't know the name of this character here, but you're getting it. All right, that's okay. Let's run our application, and wow! But there's a much easier way to show you the customer name, which is doing this interpolation here. as you can imagine, there's a lot of places in our system that we will need to show the customer name, and this is becoming a little painful if you start to separate the information within first name and last name. You separate information every time you want to show the entire customer name. You need to do this string interpolation here, which is really bad. So basically, what I usually do is to override the toString method, and then you can return it here, first name and last name, right? So here we can just say customer dot name. It will probably work, right? Or if you want to string, this will also work, but there's no need to put this toString on the end of your name. So if you look to this code, it's much more. It seems to be much more cleaner than we started. So every time we start a customer, we instantiate a customer, we can clearly see which methods it need, with properties it expects with is a name, a document, an email here. When you start a new name, which is a complex type, it's not a primitive type, it's not just a string, it's a name, it's a composed type. We see that we can expect a first name and a last name here. When we start a new document, we need the document number, the email address. We also see that our classes, we split it into multiple classes. And there's a good thing about it. That's because as smaller your class is, it's easier to change, right? If you write a small class, just a few properties, just a few methods, it is very easy to find what you want and to change it. And even if you need to throw it away and create a total new class, this is fine also. We are moving forward in the programming world to a topic called microservices, which is the training topic of the moment. And we are taking some new words from that is make things smaller, easy to maintain, easy to change, and easy to throw away and create new, right? We say that in the microservices world, which is a new word. But as you can see, we say this in OOP since 2002, 1999. I don't know, but the old things are coming back with new names. And if you know the basics, if you know how to build things in a smart way, you're ready for microservices. You're ready for everything that you need. And for example, in this code that we wrote completely in C#, you can easily use these concepts on JavaScript. For example, create your functions in JavaScript with a few code possible. Create reusable functions. Create functions that doesn't modify the other functions or other properties. Don't let other classes or other functions change your functions. Because this is not good, as you can see on the patterns. And if you need to create more classes, let's suppose that we need to create a seller class, right? Public class seller, right? And it will got the property name, property document, property email, right? All right. That's it. It's created. It's built, right? You know, you spend some time segregating the things, separating the classes and other things. Then you gain some time. You increase your development speed moving forward. If I tell you to create a class and most of your properties are already built. Your name are built, your documents are built, your email are built. It will be easy because they are in a separate classes. They have the business rule already written, right? And in your scenario, probably it will be tested already. So these are the basic concepts of using object-oriented here, right? Uh, I'm doing a series of video on my YouTube channel that I will invite you to join that. And there I'm telling you about more tips about OOP, but in a very slow way. Here we had just 1 hour to discuss about these tips and how OOP works. But there, for example, just to talk about Constructor, I spend about 20 or 40 minutes about complex class and other things. I will talk about solid clean code and a bunch of other things also, right? So basically, this in terms of code, this is what I want to show you guys. This is just I consider this the basics of OOP here. Not creating primitive obsession class. Create separate the concerns. Create intuitive codes and write the business rules once. Do not repeat that. Respect the single point of failure, SPOF. Respect the solid, and a bunch of other things, right? So let me check if there's any questions on the chat. I just coded
Okay.
until now.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
I just realized I didn't introduce myself in the beginning. So just so you guys know, my name is Anna. Okay, today I am representing developers BR in this live. That's it. Let me check. People, do you have any questions for André?
They're helping me with that name. It's curling brace.
Oh,
Curling brace
yeah,
or curling brackets? I think it's curling brackets because
I,
brackets are that
yeah,
we just the same of we do you put them into. So
I
that's
can't
nice.
remember either. Yeah.
To be true, I don't know the name even in Portuguese. I'm very bad at that. All
Oh.
right.
So no one has any question? Have any question? I can't see anyone here
Yeah.
asking anything.
Good to know
Um,
that everybody's knowing everything about OOP.
yeah, I thought it very interesting about the thing you said about separation of
Concert,
responsibility. No, sorry.
concert, separation of
Yeah,
concert
yeah. Separation of
or
concepts.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, because usually we don't think about that so in tiny in such details. I
Yeah,
can say, yeah,
yeah. That's the main point. That's because we are if you are talking about OP, we are on the first classes in the school or even every book you read about OOP, you can read the first words that we need to separate the concerns, right? But no one tells you which kind of separation you need to do. Uh, what details level you should separate this, right? And this is hard. If you separate in a very high detail, you will not separate very well. And if you separate in such a low details, it can be confused. It can be complicated. So there's no rule for that. Do I need to create the name in a separate class? I don't know. It depends on the situation, right? If you not if you need to validate the name, if the name has some rules, right? It's a good thing to do. But if you're just checking if it is empty or not, maybe you can create a complex object. You just create a string, and that is fine. But it's good to know that you can down on the details like that, and you can separate your code in such a way that is really easy to understand, really easy to see. You can focus on your, for example, the form is not submitting because the email is wrong, but the email is correct on the screen. But in the task, the email is correct, but in our code, the email is wrong. So I basically go to my code, find the email class, right? Focus on that. So make some tests to check if the regular expression is validating the email correctly. And if I change the email, my entire system that uses the email class will change automatically. So I don't need to go to the substitute code, find and replace, and check for every class they use a string called email and change the regular expression there. So there's such way that we start to really separate the concerns, become more easy to test. The tasks slow down a little bit. We have fewer tests. We don't have a million tests on our project. We have a few tests, but testing we need to be tested and reuse this code. And I talk too much.
Sorry?
I talk too much.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think we have a question here. Jose asked you, what if you have heritage instead of duplicating code?
There are situations for both. I think the heritage is to extend a class. For example, you can have a class called people, person, something like that, and then you can extend it to an employee, to a customer, and there will be this scenario. And there will be cases that you don't want to extend the class. Your classes are totally different. For example, the email. You can have your email on a customer, right? That is one thing. Then you can have your email on a shipping address, for example, because your billing or shipping is different. The person who buys can be different with the person who is on your system, right? So we can have distinct situations. The email can supply that, right? There's a lot of questions. Not sure if I answered this question. If you have a scenario, feel free. I have a question. I can create a master class, another class, inherit the master class, write it. Why you did not make this way? In fact, I usually do this way. I usually create, for example, for my entities, I create a base class called the entity, and all my other entities inherit from that. And for my value objects, which is a subject that I did not told here, but it's very important too. I create also a value object, master class, and the other class I heard from that. This is a good way, a good pattern. I just did not do it here because it's a simple demo. I just did not want to mess the things up, right?
Okay.
And sorry. Sorry.
Keep going.
He complemented the question, asking because the solid. No, no, in fact, no. The solid doesn't tell you can't create a base class and hurt from it, right?
Okay. Well, and does anyone have any other question? Because I don't see anything in here.
All right.
Okay. Let's just wait like a second and
Great. There's a book that I really want to recommend. This is not just for who want to learn C sharp. Uh, this book is from a guy called Uncle Bob, or Robert C. Martin. It's called Clean Code. Clean Code.
it's a
Uh,
famous book.
yeah, it's a famous book. You
Yeah,
always should read that. And this book basically gives you the base concepts of oriented object programming. And Robert C. Martin, or Uncle Bob, is the creator of the solid pattern. Uh, it's consists on 5 best practices to write good codes in any language. So this book is very good. There's a complementing of this book, which is the Clean Coder. The first is Clean Code. The second is Clean Coder. And he launched a book of 2017, if I'm not wrong, called the Clean Architecture, which is if you say Robert C. Martin on the book, you can buy.
yeah, you can read
That's
that.
awesome. Yeah, he have such a very good way to cheat you with his words, which is really awesome. All
Yeah,
right.
I've heard about these books too, and the everyone says that you just have to read it. You just have to understand the concepts of both of them. The book about architecture I haven't heard yet, but I will look for it for sure. Um, there are some people thanking you for sharing your knowledge with us. I also would like to thank you very much for your time for the this content here. It's very rich information for us. Okay, and we are very happy that you you could share all this knowledge with us today. Okay.
Great, great. I also thank you and Tamiris, which is not here also, but I know it's part of developers. BR. And thank you guys for watching this session till now. I know that you're probably very tired to work the entire day. And if you want to know more about me, more about my courses, and understand more about OOP in a no easy way, I say that sadly, I'm happy to say that we don't have basic courses on Baltieri, right? So it's just such kind of hardcore course, and just go to balta.io. We'll put the link here, right? You find more about me about my course, right? Thank you very much, Anna, for
Okay. So thank you guys for watching us today. We are on Meetup platform, so you guys can follow us there and be and know about our further events. Okay, we have events online. We have some in São Paulo, in Jundiaí, in Brasilia, okay? And thank you very much, André. And that's it. I think that's it. Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye.